would you say that the Canadian Dietary Guidelines are supportive of a plant-based diet?
Absolutely. We have one of the best dietary guidelines in the world, country-specific guidelines in the world. It was updated in 2019. It's very evidence-based. They didn't allow the usual lobbyists to come in and influence the guidelines. So this was something quite unusual, and it allowed for this very evidence-based guideline. So if you look at the plate, it is mostly plants. Half the plate is fruits and vegetables, a quarter is whole grains, and a quarter is protein, of which they say very specifically, emphasize plant proteins over animal protein. So it's at least 87.5% plants. It has taken dairy out as an essential food group. So that's huge. There was a lot of, the meat and dairy industry, which have a lot of power here in Canada. There was quite the backlash. There was a lot of articles in the newspapers, and it's great. It's a fabulous guideline. The difficulty is it's not really translated into everyday practice still, but it was a huge step forward, definitely.
Yes, I do remember when the Nutrition Canada came out with, we're not going to include dairy anymore. And out here in the United States, we were like, wow, this is awesome. Like, USDA, wake up. We really, really need you guys to pay attention. This is what your neighbor's doing. So Shireen, what do you feel about the UK's population dietary guidelines? How do you think they compare to, how Zahra just described the Canadian guidelines to be?
Yeah, so we have the Eat Well guide that came out in 2016, and actually it's not so bad. When you flick up the poster again, you'll see that 2/3 of that plate, the green and the yellow, are all plant-based foods. They're fruits and vegetables and whole grains and starchy vegetables. There's that blue section there that is for dairy, but clearly states dairy alternatives without sort of suggesting one or the other. And that pink bit is protein, and it clearly says in the small print that we can't read right now, says choose plant proteins and beans as your preference. So it's really not so bad, but we have a problem worldwide, I think, that dietary guidelines are just not implemented. It's that implementation step, so there's quite clear studies showing that if the nation ate as per the Eat Well guide, our health would be so much better and our environmental footprint would be better. So it's not bad. And it's very adaptable to a plant-based diet, and that's what we did as part of our work at Plant-Based Health Professionals, was just sort of veganize it, and it was totally straightforward. It wasn't that difficult. We just had to add the B12 and considerations for iodine, because of course dairy is the main source of iodine in the UK. We don't iodize our salt, so it is hugely adaptable for a vegetarian and also a vegan diet. So I don't have great problems with it. Of course, the next guide, I would hope, would not feature at all any dairy, would make a point of noting the unsustainability of fish consumption, and really it tells citizens not to focus on animal sources of protein at all. It really is not necessary. But if we got a step closer to that, I think we would all be doing so much better.
Right, absolutely. We're inching towards a plant-based future, and that's how it's going to be. And I know that you guys have actually put together something called the Eat Well Guide. I'm just going to bring it up, and I'd love for you to talk to me a little bit about this.
Yeah, so as I say, it's just a plant-based version of our UK Eat Well guide. We just called it the Plant-Based Eat Well guide. And as I say, it's really, really adaptable. That blue section now that did include some dairy in the original version is just now dairy alternatives, such as soya or pea or oats, or whatever your choice is for your plant-based beverage that replaces dairy. And then, in the protein section, we emphasize healthy sources of protein, which is beans, nuts, seeds, and as I say, emphasize getting plant sources of omega-3 fatty acids that most people are used to getting from fish, but we know are easily obtained from seeds such as flax seeds and linseeds, the same thing, flax seeds, hemp seeds, chia seeds, and also walnuts, and even soya is a good source of omega-3 fatty acids. Taking consideration about how you're going to get your B12 and your iodine, and obviously vitamin D for the whole nation, probably all year round, looking at our sun exposure.
Right, absolutely. And you both mentioned about how even though these national dietary guidelines are more or less there, I mean, they're starting to call out things, even though in fine print, choose plant-based alternatives. And obviously, Canada is leading the way, actively choosing to remove dairy from their guidelines. But you mentioned the implementation part and things that are missing. So what do you think are the barriers against adoption of either an entirely plant-based diet or a plant-forward diet, and really implementing what the government says that we should be eating?
Well, I'll have a go at this for the UK first. I mean, I think, the government say one thing, but then actually do not implement it themselves. So it's literally all the way from farm to fork we have the problem. If you think that of the fact that over 70% of farmland in the UK is dedicated to producing food from animals, be it meat, dairy, these are foods in inverted commas that are not required, are harming us health-wise and planetary health, yet we are producing too much meat that we can export, and we are only producing enough fruits and vegetables for about 20 to 30%, compared to wanting to produce 100% and be self-sufficient, which we used to be not so long ago. So we really need to flip our farming system if we really are going to put into practice what we should be preaching. I mean, we can't be producing food on the one hand that is not necessary, that's harming us, and yet be telling people to eat things and eat products that we have no capacity to actually provide. So, I mean, that's first and foremost for me in terms of how the UK needs to move to a plant-forward food system. I'm not saying I've got the solutions or answers to this, but until we recognize that it's completely upside down with production. And then it comes down to, what we're serving in public institutions at these teachable moments in schools and hospitals and universities. That my hospital is still serving processed red meat, and it's going to be a challenge to try and remove it. I mean, they've committed to it, but then actually getting rid of it is a different matter. And then the education system itself, as we've said, health professionals are not necessarily brought up to speed in this latest science, which is the aspect that we're trying to address through our education programs. So, just about 2-3 weeks ago, the UK have now got a set of core curriculum and competencies for medical students that will have to learn nutrition as part of their course. But when you actually do a deep dive into that document, the only time that the words vegan and vegetarian are used when they talk about restrictive diets and nutritional concerns. And there was not a word about sustainability. So that made me sad, because it just leaves it open, doesn't it, for everyone to teach diet as they are used to doing, and it doesn't help us move forward. But I'm encouraged because just today, actually, plant-based health professionals gave a teaching session to 80 medical students at Exeter University as part of their global and planetary health module. So I think, opposed to the nutrition and dietetics learning, I think, global health, planetary health has now become part of the core curriculum, and that group of individuals are much more open to talking about plant-based diets as sustainable diets. I've kind of gone slightly off track here, but we've been instructed by organizations like the International Association for GPs and also the Eat Lancet Commission that healthcare professionals are key to implementing these sustainable diets. So, coming back to the barriers, it's kind of educating ourselves as health professionals and then being confident to support individual patients communities and policymakers to do the right thing. So all the way from farming down to individual choice, with education in the middle, needs to change.